Hi folks, Joey Ricard with TrackSideScenery.com. Welcome back. Yep, it's that time of the year again. The glory of the fall season is upon us. The air is getting cooler and the scenery all around us is starting to change. For some of us, the fall season has a sentimental value like no other. Hey, if you're like me, that's not me by the way, you wish that the landscape always looked like this. Yep, those vibrant colors that we've come to expect and hope for each year. From the small details on the ground in front of us to the wide open vistas, there's no mistaking autumn. Everything takes on a refreshing new look and new character, especially railroads. Our model railroads don't have to be excluded from this fascinating seasonal change, and it's pretty easy if you're willing to put in the time and effort. In this video, we're going to do just that. I'm going to show you how I converted a summer-based model railroad into a beautiful, vibrant, convincing fall theme. If you haven't noticed, my layout already has trees on it, and we covered it in this video called Quick Trees. It's right here on the channel. Be sure to check it out because that's where we explain how to make trees from scratch, where in this video we're more concerned with converting the colors. But it doesn't matter either way. You can start from scratch here, or you can convert the trees you already have. The only difference is that we're not making tree armatures, branches, and trunks. Refer back to the Quick Trees video for that one. The biggest consideration as far as supplies are concerned is the foliage that you're going to use. Now we all know there's a lot of different products out there that can get the job done. A lot of them have different textures and different consistencies. It's up to you to experiment with them and see what works best for you. In this case, I'm using a bunch of different materials from a bunch of different manufacturers, including Knock, Scenery Express, and Woodland Scenics. Although I'm working in O scale for this project, these materials work just as well for other scales. The only difference is with a smaller scale like N scale, you're going to have to use finer materials. Okay, we're going to get started on this corner of the layout where there's 3 trees behind this shack. There's also a bunch of bushes and vines. We talked about consistencies and texture, and this particular product here is an orange-yellow autumn mix, but it's a little too coarse for my liking, so what I'm going to do is grind it up in a blender. Because it's a foam-based product, it's not going to break down too far and end up like a powder, but it's going to be just enough to where it simulates leaves. I don't know if you can see it here, but it's pretty coarse. So let's go ahead and break that down by putting it in the blender. I'm tilting the blender back and forth because if you don't, it all stays at the bottom and it doesn't really do anything. And here as I pour it in, you'll see the chunks are smaller and at least they're all consistent with each other. We're going to call this tree number 1. It was on the right-hand side of the shack. We're going to give this little guy a nice autumn mix of that orange and yellow. There's our good friend Mr. Hairspray. You're going to need lots of hairspray. Okay, while I'm dousing this thing, if you're starting from scratch, you'll need to refer back to the Quick Trees video. The difference is, instead of using a darker green, you're going to use a lighter green, and you're going to get to the same step, and you're going to be where we're at right now. This would be your second step in putting the fall colors on because you'd already have a coat of green. So let's just say that we started from scratch right here. I always say that there's no right or wrong, and you don't have to use a green undercoat, but I think it looks better. In all fairness, the tree was green before it changed to fall colors, so some trees have a lot of green in it. I start with the tree upside down to get the underside of the leaves, or what would be the underside of the leaves, and I work my way to the top and then back down again. Just like any other technique, it requires practice and trial and error. And you see how I got a lot on there and it looks clumped? Don't worry about that because we're going to fix it later. The biggest thing to remember is to apply and reapply. You're going to be using a lot of hairspray. It's almost going to seem crazy, but you really need it to get this stuff to stick. Make sure you pay close attention to the tips of the branches. You want to make it look full. I know it's monotonous. It's a very repetitive process, but if you take your time, you'll have a nice looking tree. Did I mention you need to apply and reapply to get full coverage? Now that we have decent coverage overall, I'm going to sprinkle on some yellow highlights, just like you could do if you frosted your hair. But don't frost your hair, because that's like an 80s rock band. When I feel it looks reasonable enough, I'll put the tree aside, and then I'll keep looking over and notice that there's spots that need to be fixed, and I'll do that while it's sitting in the stand. Let's move on to tree number 2. This one was in the middle, right behind the shack. We're going to have this tree contrast the tree we just did, so we're going to give this a red and yellow mix. Now, as always, I'm going to start off with the, come on, hairspray, yep. And we're going to undercoat this with a light green. If you were starting from scratch, you'd already have the light green on there, so you could eliminate that step. But we're just adding a little bit on there to give it some lighter color underneath. I know I keep talking about the hairspray, but you're going to use a lot of it. Let's move on to the red. We're going to do the same process we did with the other tree. We're going to sprinkle from the bottom up and then work our way back down. We're going to apply and reapply as needed. If you're starting from scratch, you're probably not going to have a lot of problems with clumping, but since these trees are already existing, I want to make sure they look good. So I'm going to pick at them and fluff them up a little bit. I think they call that tussling. We have a good base coat of red, so we're going to add in some yellow before moving on to the next tree. For tree number 3, we're going to stick with our theme of variety and experiment with a little bit of yellow and green. Again, we're going to start this one off with a light coat of green, and remember, if you're starting from scratch, you'll have already arrived at this step. Working with the yellow, I'm going to start this one off with a sifter. And the reason I'm doing this is I want some of the finer particles to get way down in there. Once I have a good light coat of the finer particles, I'm going to go ahead and work with the larger leaves. And I'm going to do this the same way we've been doing the whole video. Apply and reapply. Just keep in mind, if these trees aren't done, and once they're sitting on the stand over there to my left, we're going to go back through them and apply and reapply where we need it. We're going to trim off loose strands. And I did just that. I spent a few minutes going through each tree to make sure they look decent before I put them on the layout. You can still fix them once they're on the layout, but it's a lot easier to take care of the glaring defects before you put them on the layout. Now that we've got the trees done, we need to consider where we're going to put them. So we need to take care of these vines and bushes, and we need to bring those into autumn also. Now this is the same process as in the video, vines and bushes. So if you haven't seen that, you want to make these, refer to that video. It's right on our YouTube channel. We're just going to keep it simple and give these a little bit of lighter green and some yellow. Now this is the same light green that I was using on the trees, and I'm just going to sprinkle it on there. I'm not going to put too much on there. It's not a tree. These are just supposed to be highlighted leaves. But don't worry, if you put too much on, you can tussle it and pick at it and get it right. Now there's a lot of different colors in the real world, but we're just keeping it simple with a little bit of light green and yellow. In case you're wondering why I'm not masking off the track or the structures from the hairspray, I've had no problem with that. The track has got to be cleaned anyway, and hairspray dries clear, you won't even notice it. Where's the drum roll? Okay, the part you've been waiting for, putting the tree back on the layout. Tree number 1. We're going to put it right back in the slot that it came out of, and we're going to have to adjust it a little bit. You know, I'll tell you what, it's a little bit heavier than when it came off the layout, so I might need to prop it up with something behind it underneath the bushes. But once I get it in place, I'm going to go ahead and take care of any of those areas that I messed up with my hand when I was putting it back in. And as you can see, it looks pretty decent. Now tree number 2 was definitely a lot heavier than when it came off the layout, so I had to use a couple pieces of foam behind it to hold it up while it dried. But I'm going to mask that all off with these bushes, and I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other side. I can't stress enough, don't be too concerned with clumping or putting too much on. You can always tussle it, it'll go down between all the little fibers. Now any good modeler knows you don't just stick a tree on the layout and leave it. You got to fool with it and position it so it looks right. Obviously, if you're doing this from scratch and planting the tree there for the first time, it's a lot easier. The fact that this tree gained a significant amount of volume in its branches made it a little more difficult. But no problem. I knew that tree number 3 was going to be easy, except for the fact that it was heavy too and I had to prop it up. But we're going to go ahead and take care of that bush next to it first. Now for the record, I've done quite a few fall themed layouts in the past, but I've never converted from a summer theme to a fall theme. It sure was an experience, but it was fun. If you want to see more of the fall-themed spruce coal and timber layout, you'll have to check out our Facebook page. And that address is facebook.com/sprucemodel, SPRUCEMODEL. I hope you've enjoyed this quick look at a few simple techniques to add some autumn splendor to your layout. This is Joey Ricard with TracksideScenery.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time.